All right, so you all knew this was coming. After sorting through all of the, crap from the conglomerate Hollywood system, the blockbusters, all the mindless movies, there are always a few gems out there, and they're worth talking about. So these are my top 5 favorite films of 2013. Now, I will preface this by saying that I'm not going to rank these movies like I have done in the past because they're just so vastly, all these movies that I've picked for my list are just so vastly different from one another that I didn't think it was fair to compare them in that way. So this list is going to be, for the most part, in no particular order. But I also wanted to say that, I didn't get to see a lot of the movies that I still want to see. I haven't seen Blue is the Warmest Color. I didn't see August Osage County or Nebraska, all those movies. But, what can I say? I have a social life and it costs money to go to the movies, and that is something that I don't have. So, based on what I have seen, these are my top 5 favorite films of 2013. So I'm going to start with 12 Years a Slave. Steve McQueen, the director, to me has always had the talent, and he always has appeared to me like he could be a great auteurist filmmaker, but it's just he hasn't had that much to work with, I don't think. His movies, like, Shame, for instance, did not have, the characters and the ideas in it just seemed like outlines rather than, fully fleshed out ideas and characters. But 12 Years a Slave to me is the crowning achievement, the example set, and at least for me, for 2013, of when you have a really great or promising director and a great script and they come together, it is lightning in a bottle. And to me, this movie is just, I have nothing bad to say about it. It's expertly crafted. The performances are just incredible. And I love the fact that it's a movie that is, a Hollywood film from the point of view of an actual slave or an African American playing a slave, which you'd think would be like, just that sounds obvious, but, it's Hollywood and we don't see that very often. And, the way that you follow this person's journey, this character's journey, it is raw and it's just unbridled, it's brutal, and it's probably the best film I've ever seen about the subject of slavery. Next is Before Midnight. And as most people know, this is part of a trilogy, the third film in a trilogy of movies that follows the love story between two people. Now, I have heard, some criticism of the film. Some people didn't like the movie because they thought that the characters have become maybe more unlikable than they have been in the previous two. But to me, that is what I loved the most about the movie. To me, that's why the movie works and why it has more depth, I think, than the other two movies, because it's about following a relationship that is obviously very mature. So it's going to have its flaws. It's a story that lifts the curtains of idealism, or the love story idealism, so to speak, and showing you all of the insecurities and the pain and the work that goes in to love and a relationship. And it also shows you, though, how companionship is such a need, a basic need of humans, that we will make those sacrifices. We're willing to go through the struggle and the hardship in order to be with somebody, in order to make love last. And I think that's a really powerful idea. And, as I said, this one may be a little bit more unfiltered and more gritty than the other films, but to me, I love that kind of stuff. So that's why it's my favorite of the three. And speaking of relationships, my next film on the list is Her, which is another movie about the complexity of relationships. Although I think that this one is even more complex, and it takes those concepts and opens them up more. There's more questions there. And it's just a little bit, it's more unique. Definitely it's more unique. And I think maybe because I saw it so recently, it's still fresh in my mind, but I love how it examines the loneliness of the world and how we are so isolated from each other, and how none of us really understand what we want out of life, how we're always searching through all of these different ways and through relationships, through the digital medium, through media and all of that. But we just kind of keep going on because, I mean, that's what we do. We survive. I don't think, and I said this in my review, I don't think that the film is judging us. And I found that to be, refreshing and new, because a lot of times when you've got movies that deal with this sort of concept, they're always judging and saying, this is what we're becoming slaves to technology. And I love the fact that this movie is depicting that, particularly with just the cinematography, the imagery, and just the style of it in general, with a very curious and hopeful, hypnotic quality. And it makes it very personal and beautiful. I think the fact that we are seeing everything through the eyes of Joaquin Phoenix, who is kind of the everyman, is supposed to represent the everyman, gives it that personality. So not only is it about artificial intelligence and media and all of these things, but it's intertwined with that, humanity and personality. And that's what makes it such a great achievement. Next is American Hustle. And this movie is just a fun ride of a film. And the reason being is because it's just so crisp and it's got such biting dialogue and wit to it. And it's obviously influenced by a lot of the film school brats from like the 1970s. Scorsese being the most obvious example, but what I've said and what I appreciate so much about this movie is that it's not a pastiche of these kinds of genres and of these kinds of filmmakers. It's inspired by them, and it really stands on its own 2 feet. It has risen to a different level, not a better level, but a different level, and it's a Hollywood film, and it's in the tradition of a Hollywood film, but it's unique. And it talks a lot about materialism and capitalism, which seems to be a running theme in these movies, or the movies of this year. But I think this one handled it the smartest, or, I mean, at least in my opinion. And I think the reason is because the characters are just more rich, and the story itself is more innovative, and it's more of a genre bender. And I mean, above all, it's just entertaining. But I mean, when you really pick it apart, you realize how meticulous it is, and I love it. What can I say? Okay, the last movie I'm going to talk about is my favorite film of the year. I know I said I wasn't going to rank these movies, but this one is just, in my mind, such a clear favorite that I just felt like I wanted to talk about it, or save it for last. Save the best for last. This is Inside Llewyn Davis. That's my favorite film of the year. And I think there's a lot of reasons why it really stuck to me personally. One of them is that I love the fact that it captures the struggles that artists and just people in general go through, how we strive for perfection, and success, and oftentimes it does not come to us. For instance, Oscar Isaac, plays the main character who's supposed to be kind of, us, the everyman, but he's a character actor. He's fabulous in this movie, fabulous, but he is not a well-known actor. But around him are all these very famous actors. You've got Justin Timberlake, Carey Mulligan, John Goodman in supporting roles. And this, to me, is very intentional because it's showing... as I said, Oscar is our everyman, and we are seeing the world through his eyes. We see all of these success stories around us, famous people and great things, but it doesn't often happen to us. And because of that, we see the world as success or failure. We want to see the world very black and white. But, and this to me is even more powerful, more potent in the film, or a theme that I found to be very powerful, is the fact that, yes, we do want things black and white, but there is a very important in between that we often miss. And that's what this movie's trying to bring out. It's where humans, we're always trying to make sense of the world, and we do it through our passions, through our art. And art is a very complex thing. Sometimes it can be joyful or euphoric. Sometimes it's very painful and it's all we have. Oftentimes we're making art of our pain. I know I said that in my review. But at the end of the day, no matter what, it's how we communicate to the world. and or communicate ourselves to the world. And that to me is the most powerful statement conveyed in any movie this year, and that is why Inside Llewyn Davis is my favorite film. So those are my top 5 films of the year, and I would love to hear what some of you guys have seen, what your favorite movies are, what you recommend for me to see, since I obviously have not seen quite as many as I would have liked to. And you can follow me on Twitter. The link is below. And also, the Golden Globes are on Sunday, and like last year, I will be tweeting throughout the show because I just like to do that. So if you're a follower, you can join, or if you're not a follower, please do follow. And yeah, it might be fun. But anyway, thank you all for listening.